Hello everyone, today we're going through each hero's sounds and animations and what it means for you playing as or against them. This is the part 2 to my general movement and sound guides where I go over the sound and animations in a general sense, but I don't get into the specifics about each hero in those videos. Well, as promised, it's here. I'll put the timestamp so you can look at any hero you want easily. You don't have to watch the entire thing, but before that, I just need to explain one thing. I measured the volume of each ability and animation, and I'll be giving you those volumes as a scale from 0 to 100. Volume on a computer is relative. It's different for each person. Plus, you can be closer or further away, so it is a relative scale. The highest abilities are around a 70, like Junkrat's Mine, for example, and the lowest abilities are 0, meaning they're so quiet that they get drowned out by just the ambient buzz. Anyway, that's about all you need to know, so let's get into it. All right, let's start off with Genji. So his running speed is pretty quiet, but his walking speed is very, very quiet. So you're pretty stealthy just running around. Crouching is definitely worth it if you want to really sneak up to people. Your reload isn't very loud either, so don't worry about doing that too much. Your dash, very loud ability, of course, and you're jumping though. So if you're walking around as Genji and want to be sneaking, don't jump. It's just so loud. He has a very normal sounding jump, as in it's equal to the rest of the offense heroes. Plus he shouts when he double jumps. Now, I think to make up for his good jumping animation or something, Genji has a pretty weak crouching animation where he just goes down very slightly. So don't really crouch too much. It's not a very powerful option for Genji. Next up, we have Mccree. Now, Mccree is very loud. Everything he does is so loud. His running is very loud, but his crouch walking is still pretty loud relative to other crouch walkers. So you're not going to be sneaking around with Mccree pretty much no matter what you do. Also, his reload itself is quite loud. So again, if you reload, you're going to give yourself away. His jumping, also very loud, but he has a pretty decent jump. His crouch, though, is really the best. Mccree's crouch is much better relative to most of the other DPS heroes. Now, Pharah. Pharah is actually pretty interesting because she has one of the quietest running animations in the game, but the rest of her kit is quite loud. Her rockets, her boosts, her jump, all of that is very, very loud. So walking around as Pharah can get you pretty far, pretty stealthily. But the moment you use a boost, the moment you jump, the moment you reload even, your reload is almost as fast as your walking sound, or use your boosters, then you're going to be given away. Her crouch and jump are pretty average. And that's actually a theme for all the DPS heroes here. Most of them have kind of jumps and kind of average duck. Now going to Reaper here, he has very loud running speed and very quiet crouch walking speed. So definitely use the crouch walk when you want to get around. His shift is incredibly loud. That's like super, super loud. They're going to hear you from anywhere. His reload quite quiet though, so that's fine. And of course his teleport, very loud. Now again, his jump, pretty average. His duck, pretty average. Just like a normal DPS. Soldier stays pretty true to his character here, and he's middle of the pack all around. His running sound is not too loud, not too low. Same thing with his walking sound. His sprint, though, is incredibly loud. If you're trying to sneak around, his sprint is just going to give you away immediately. So is his reload, super mega loud. Now, something unique, though, about Soldier is that his duck is very, very strong. His duck brings him down so low. So spamming duck on Soldier is quite strong. His jump, on the other hand, kind of mediocre. Sombra also stays true to her personality, being the quietest hero in the game, at least when it comes to her normal animations. Very, very quiet run sound, practically silent walking sound. You have to be careful though, because her stealth sound and her translocator are incredibly loud, and they'll be able to be heard from very, very far away. Her jump and her duck animations are pretty average, I'd say middle of the pack. Her duck maybe being slightly above average, so if you're going to use anything, use the duck. Now, though, we have Tracer, who's a very unique character because her run sound is very, very loud, up there with Mccree, Roadhog, the super loudest heroes in the game. You're not going to be sneaking anywhere, but her walk sound is very quiet, almost silent. So that's what you're going to be using to run around, sneak around. Her reload, very quiet as well. Of course, her blinks, her ability is very loud like most heroes. Jump is also very loud, so never jump when you're trying to sneak around. But her animation in general, her jump is extremely strong, and her duck is pretty good too. So very strong animations that you should use. So now we're out of the DPS heroes and into the defense heroes. Lots of variety here. First we have Bastion, who is basically the loudest hero in the game. His run speed is the loudest. His duck speed, though, strangely enough, very, very quiet. So if you want to be sneaky with good old Bastion, you can. His reloads, on the other hand, very loud. And his sentry reload, well, if you're trying to sneak around the corner as a sentry, just don't reload. Let me tell you, it's super, super loud. His jumping animation is actually kind of strong. I mean, it's not good, but it's at least average. His duck animation, though, absolutely pathetic. Just don't duck with this hero. Next up, a bit of a quieter hero, we have Hanzo. Now, this guy is pretty much what you would expect. Pretty quiet run speed, pretty quiet walk speed, and relatively quiet jump. As for his animations, his jump is pretty okay. I wouldn't say it's actually that good, probably below average. His duck, though, is pretty good, so I'd be using that, if anything, in a fight. Now, Junkrat is a pretty loud guy, and there's nothing you can really do about it. You won't be sneaking around as him very much. His running sound is pretty loud. Walking sound isn't doing you any favors. It's not going to really be very sneaky. His reload, pretty loud. And his mine is one of the loudest things in the entire game. Now, his jumping animation is actually quite strong, so spamming that jump can get you somewhere, but his duck is absolutely pathetic. Next up, we have Mei, who's actually pretty interesting. Her running sound is rather quiet. Her walking sound is pretty quiet as well, but really her running sound is good enough to sneak around most places. Her reload is a little bit loud, though. Using that might give you away, but her animations are pretty bad. Her jump is very weak, and her duck is also very weak, so using those really won't get you too much in a fight. Next up, we have Torbjorn, another hero who's loud and proud. Pretty loud running sound, a pretty loud walking sound, and a pretty loud jumping sound as well. Now, I don't show the turret here, but placing the turret is very loud as well. People will be able to hear that from a mile away. That'll give you away immediately. His reload, though, kind of quiet, so don't worry about that one too much, I guess. Now, his jumping animation is amazing. This short guy has serious ups, but his duck, not so much, barely even noticeable. So, not something that you want to be using. Next up, everyone's favorite hero, Widowmaker. Her sounds and animations are actually very strong all around. Her running sound is very quiet, plus it kind of blends in with the ambient sound just the way it is. She has basically no walking sound, so it's a very sneaky hero. Jumping, though, will give you away instantly. And her jumping animation is very strong, her ducking animation very strong as well, so abuse those in a firefight. Now, probably the simplest hero to review, D.Va. She can't duck, she can't reload. Her walking is super ultra loud, the loudest in the game. Her rocket is super ultra loud. And her jumps, as you might expect, are super ultra loud. Now, her jumping animation looks kind of cool, but you can actually shoot through her legs and still hit her. So her jumping animation is really quite weak. Next up, Reinhardt. You see him in every game with the loudest running speed in the entire game. Each step is the equivalent of a jump to most heroes. His walking speed, though, is surprisingly sneaky. He can be sneaky when he wants to. Now, his jumping animation also surprisingly strong. That's like a pretty strong jumping animation compared to most tanks. His duck, though, as you'd expect, not so good. And you'll find that most tanks have these sort of below average subpar animations, particularly their crouches. Now, Roadhog, very loud, obviously one of the louder running sounds in the game. His walking sound isn't going to be doing him any favors either. The loudest walking sound in the game, plus his reload, also super loud. Now, his jumping animation, surprisingly amazing. He really goes up in the air. His duck animation, though, you can barely even tell that it exists. Now, Winston is one of the quieter tanks, actually, with a run sound that's a little bit below average. Unfortunately, the walking sound isn't as sneaky and quiet as a lot of the smaller heroes, so you can't really sneak around quite as well with him. But his reload is quiet as well. His leap, though, once you leap, that is one of the loudest abilities in the game. People will hear you from miles and miles away. His jumping animation, like Roadhog, pretty decent actually, and actually not that loud. His duck animation, though, again, super bad. At least he tucks his head in. Zarya is a character built a little bit differently than most tanks. Her hitbox is much, much thinner. She's smaller. Her running sound is in the loud range. Her walking sound isn't doing her many favors either. Her reload as well, very loud. That's going to give you away immediately. Her jumping animation, unlike the other tanks we just went over, is awful. Don't ever really use this, but her duck is pretty good, so that could maybe help you out. Alright, out of the tanks and into the supports, all these healers have some of the strongest animations in the game. Start with Ana, who has a very, very quiet running volume and a silent walking volume, so very, very sneaky. Her reload, though, is very, very loud, so the moment you do this, you're going to be given away. Don't reload if you're trying to be sneaky. Her jumping animation is exceptionally very good, and her duck is the best duck in the game, so spamming those in a fight makes you really evasive. Next up is Lucio, a hero all about sound, and he makes quite a lot of it, actually. His running sound is one of the louder ones in the entire game. You can hear him coming from a mile away. His ducking sound, though. His walking sound is very, very quiet, so that actually helps him sneak around pretty well. His reload is pretty quiet as well, and like most of the supports we're going to see here, he has an amazing jump and a pretty solid crouch as well. Mercy's animations are pretty similar to Ana, where she has quite a quiet running sound and a silent walking sound, but oddly enough, her reload is mega super loud. So if for whatever reason you want to reload the pistol with R, that's going to give you away. Her jump, pretty strong animation. Her crouch, pretty strong as well, as you'd expect from a healer. Now we have Symmetra, and so she's not a healer. She has a little bit worse animations than the rest of the support cast. She's also a little bit louder. As you see, her running volume is pretty decently higher than the rest. Her walking volume as well. And her jump animation is actually quite good, but her duck could leave a little bit to be desired compared to the rest of the healers. Last but not least, Zenyatta has no running sound and no walking sound, making walking basically a pointless thing because you make no sound anyway. He does have a reload sound and a jumping sound though, and the jumping sound depends on what surface you're jumping onto. I go over that a little bit in part 1, so you can check that out. Now, his jump is actually pretty mediocre, but his crouch is very good, so spamming crouch on Zenyatta can be quite strong. Anyway, that's just about it. It's important to know what your character is doing, and it can be difficult to see that when you're stuck in first-person view all the time. Being more knowledgeable about how your character moves and sounds from the perspective of your opponent is an important step toward truly mastering movement and positioning in Overwatch. I hope you enjoyed. Did anything here surprise you? I'd be surprised if nothing did. Never forget to stay positive and have a great day. Peace out, guys.